Venezuelans rally against dictator Nicolas Maduro. President Trump caves on the State of the Union, and the MAGA hat wars continue. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. Many things to get to today. We're going to get into the latest on Venezuela because it is interesting how certain people, certain fresh faces, aren't being asked serious questions about the situation in Venezuela. We'll get to that in just 1 second. First, let me remind you that there is no reason that you need to live with an enormous amount of credit card debt. For years, credit card companies have basically been telling you, yeah, live off the debt, it's totally fine. And then it turns out that you're getting exorbitant interest rates and you've racked up these enormous charges. It's going to take you decades to pay off. No more. With Lending Club, you can consolidate your debt or pay off credit cards with one fixed monthly payment. Since 2007, Lending Club has helped millions of people regain control of their finances with affordable, fixed-rate personal loans. No trips to a bank, no high-interest credit cards. Just go to lendingclub.com, tell them about yourself, how much you want to borrow, pick the terms that are right for you. If you're approved, your loan is automatically deposited into your bank account in as little as a few days. Lending Club is the #1 peer-to-peer lending platform with over $35 billion in loans issued. Go to lendingclub.com/Ben. Check your rate in minutes, borrow up to $40,000. That is lendingclub.com/Ben. Again, lendingclub.com/Ben. All loans made by WebBank, member FDIC, equal housing lender. Again, that's lendingclub.com/Ben. There's no reason for you to be living on that credit card debt. Instead, consolidate, get your financial house in order. Lendingclub.com/Ben. Go check them out right now. Let them know that we sent you. Alrighty, so the big news of the day is not the State of the Union, it's not the government shutdown, it's what's happening in Venezuela. Literally hundreds of thousands of people marching on the streets of Venezuela. It's astonishing. The pictures are just incredible. Here's a picture from Caracas, Venezuela, the capital, where hundreds of thousands of people poured into the streets in opposition to the evil dictator of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. Maduro, you'll recall, took office after the death of Hugo Chavez, who was also an evil dictator. For a long time, the left loved them some Hugo Chavez. They thought that Chavez was just wonderful because Chavez used the oil wealth of the country to even out income inequality. He was the one who had cured poverty. He's the one who had cured the healthcare system in Venezuela. Well, now people there are eating dogs because it turns out that when a bad person gets in charge of a top-down, centralized government system, they wreck the country. And that happened with Hugo Chavez, and now it's happened with Nicolas Maduro. Here's what some of the footage looked like from Caracas, Venezuela. This footage is astonishing. You can't see the number of people. I was just at a rally last Friday with probably 500,000 people. This is bigger than that. People cheering, holding the Venezuelan flag. The United States has recognized Nicolas Maduro's opposition, a guy named Juan Guaido, as interim president on Wednesday, leaving Nicolas Maduro ever more isolated as he faces unrest at home and threats from the United States, according to Reuters. Long-standing leftist allies Bolivia and Cuba are now the only countries in the region to explicitly voice support for Maduro, as Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Guatemala, Honduras, Panama, Paraguay, and Peru have all backed Guaido. The United States and Canada have also recognized Guaido, the 35-year-old leader of Venezuela's opposition-dominated National Assembly, as Venezuela's legitimate ruler. Mexico struck a discordant note because the leftist president there, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, said it would not take sides, and they branded support for Guaido a violation of sovereignty. Okay, so this is breaking down really along two lines. One is the line that says, no, Maduro should stay in power, and they should negotiate a settlement, and the other is Maduro needs to go. And most of the Western world has taken the position that Maduro needs to go. Your friendly democratic socialists have decided, at least in part, no, you know what? Maduro should stay. Never mind that he's an evil piece of crap. Like a legitimate evil piece of human debris. It's amazing. I'll explain to you in a second how amazing it is that there are folks coming out in quasi-support for Maduro. And make no mistake, when you have hundreds of thousands of people who are marching to oppose a military dictatorship instituted from above, and folks are saying, no, we should have a negotiated settlement, it's pretty clear which camp they are in. Reuters says the telegenic Guaido declared himself Venezuela's temporary president on Wednesday at a rally that drew hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans. He accused Maduro of usurping power and promised to create a transitional government. The diplomatic support for Guaido was a striking move in a region where countries tend to refrain from criticizing each other despite their political differences. Criticism of Maduro has grown in recent years as his government has sidelined the National Assembly, held widely questioned elections, and overseen an economic crisis that has forced millions of Venezuelans to flee, mostly to other South American countries. At the same time, because of all of this, right-leaning governments in South America have risen to power in places like Brazil, because the fact is you can only run on somebody else's money for so long. The same thing has happened in Argentina. President Trump has reiterated that all options are on the table. His administration signaled potential new sanctions against Venezuela's vital oil sector. So who is opposing the move to get rid of Maduro? Well, you got Russia. So Vladimir Putin is coming out against this move in Venezuela. So Russia is saying that the United States should not intervene militarily in Venezuela. By the way, nobody's talked about military intervention in Venezuela as of yet, and nobody is really seriously discussing that. We're talking about new economic sanctions at this point, and again, providing whatever resources to the opposition are necessary. That's not really a military intervention. Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido declared himself interim president on Wednesday, as we have said. Violence has flared during big protests across Venezuela. When they mean violence has flared, what they mean is that Maduro's forces are now attacking the protesters. In an interview with Russian journal International Affairs, published on Thursday, Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov said Moscow would stand with Venezuela to protect its sovereignty and the principle of non-interference in its domestic affairs. Weird that Russia would do that, because I seem to recall Russia invading a sovereign neighbor specifically on the basis that their domestic affairs were not properly in order. Russia invaded Crimea, and they also invaded Georgia on specifically this basis. So in other words, Russia is completely full of it, as per their usual arrangement. Asked about the prospect of U.S. military intervention in Venezuela, Ryabkov said Washington should steer clear as well. So we warn against that. We consider that would be a catastrophic scenario that would shake the foundations of the development model which we see in Latin America. There is no development model in Venezuela. The development model in Venezuela is to grab all the resources, centralize them in Nicolas Maduro, pass them out to his friends, supporters, and military allies, and destroy the people of Venezuela. That is his program. It has always been his program. That was the program of Hugo Chavez as well, when it turned out that centralizing resources and his populist top-down government was going to fail. When it became clear that you can't just make a country prosperous by grabbing all its wealth and redistributing it, Hugo Chavez simply started paying off all of his political allies to keep himself in power. And this has been true for legitimately years. Now, what's amazing about this is that you would assume that some of the folks who are sort of friendly toward the Maduro regime in the United States, some folks in the Democratic Party, would be asked about such things. You might assume that Michael Moore, who has come out in favor of Hugo Chavez years ago, would be asked about such things. Like, I think, for example, it might be worthwhile to ask Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, the fresh face of the Democratic Party, about this thing. Why? Well, she was a member of the Democratic Socialists of America until the last 5 minutes. She was a member, I believe, of the DSA as of May 2016, when they called on President Obama and the U.S. Congress to end unjust sanctions against Venezuela. Quote, "This kind of dishonest and cynical behavior is an embarrassment to all good people in the United States. For DSA, a group of activists committed to fighting for socialism and democracy in the U.S. and around the world, it is especially repulsive. We therefore state our solidarity with the people of Venezuela and call on our own government to stop its illegal, unjust interference with Venezuela, specifically to repeal these terrible laws and reverse this dishonest executive order." So they're ripping on Obama for being too harsh on Venezuela, the DSA, while AOC was purportedly a member. And so we were sort of all waiting with bated breath. What would AOC say about all of this? Especially since nobody's asking her. Nobody in the media seems it's appropriate to ask. So this morning, just in the last few minutes, she has tweeted out, she retweeted something from a guy named Ro Khanna. Ro Khanna is an Obama Commerce alum. That's what he calls himself. And here is what Ro Khanna tweeted. With respect to Senator Durbin, Senator Dick Durbin came out in favor of Maduro's opponent. Ro Khanna tweeted, with respect to Senator Durbin, the U.S. should not anoint the leader of the opposition in Venezuela during an internal polarized conflict. Let us support Uruguay, Mexico, and the Vatican's efforts for a negotiated settlement and end sanctions that are making the hyperinflation worse. In other words, he is coming out in favor of the Maduro regime. I mean, that's what that is. If you're coming out in favor of a negotiated settlement that removes sanctions and leaves Maduro in power, then you are coming out in favor of the Maduro regime. Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, her only comment so far has been to retweet that. Now, when I point that out, there are a bunch of folks on the left who say, well, that's taking her out of context. No, that's the whole context. I read you the entire tweet, and she retweeted it. Take that for what it's worth. I think there's only one way to interpret that, and that is as undercutting the democratic opposition in Venezuela. Because right now is the time to move. Right now is not the time to say, oh, well, in a negotiated settlement, Maduro has a point, and we can't interfere, let's remove the sanctions. Weird that she and Russia have the exact same position on this. Very odd, isn't it? Very strange. And this is the same thing you hear from the left when AOC is parlaying with all the folks who want to boycott Israel. And then folks on the left say, no, she doesn't support boycott of Israel. She just hangs out with all those folks and forwards their agenda. Okay, how about a straight question that she is forced to answer by the media? Asked repeatedly, do you think Nicolas Maduro must go now? Like, it's a straight, easy question. Will she be asked that question? Maybe she should be asked, like, what did he do wrong? Like, you're an economics expert, supposedly, so what did he do wrong? What did Maduro do wrong? Where did Venezuela really get screwed up? What did they do wrong? But nobody on the left will be asked these questions, despite longtime support for Hugo Chavez on the populist left. Remember Oliver Stone traveling down to do a movie about Hugo Chavez and his greatness. It's also worthwhile remembering that Venezuela's government is just one of the most evil governments on planet Earth. So this notion that you're supposed to negotiate with Nicolas Maduro and you're supposed to undercut the protesters by not recognizing the National Assembly-led opposition is insane. Amnesty International, a left-wing outfit, if ever there was one. Amnesty International says that the Venezuelan government is responsible for the worst human rights crisis in its history. This is as of September. The organization claimed that several human rights abuses had taken place in the South American country, including the use of lethal force against the most vulnerable in its society. It said that 8,292 extrajudicial executions had taken place between 2015 and 2017, so over 8,000 murders of people who didn't agree with the regime between 2015 and 2017. It found that 22% of all homicides in 2016 were at the hands of security officials. It found that the levels of economic insecurity in the country were at 87%. 87% of Venezuelans were living in abject poverty. There was a 65% increase in maternal mortality and a 30% increase in infant mortality. Venezuelan authorities have publicly stated that killing people in the context of security operations is a successful practice. Since 2014, 2.3 million people have fled Venezuela. But don't worry, AOC thinks a negotiated settlement with Maduro is going to do the trick. Yeah, but it has nothing to do with her support for Venezuela's democratic socialism. Nothing. We'll get to more of this in a second. First, let me remind you, you want to make your business better this year? Well, why would you overspend on legal costs? Okay, the fact is you can spend literally hundreds of thousands of dollars on legal costs, but there's no reason for you to do it. Instead, go check out LegalZoom right now. With their network of independent attorneys licensed in all 50 states, LegalZoom can help you navigate your legal needs. From wills and trusts to LLCs, trademarks, contract reviews, and more, LegalZoom has helped more than 4 million people like you take care of their responsibilities. The best part is LegalZoom is not a law firm, so you won't get charged by the hour. Now, lawyers use LegalZoom for a lot of their forms, but now you get even more than just the forms over at LegalZoom. I've been using it for years. Now you have that network of licensed attorneys. So make this the year you finally do the right thing for your business and don't waste money with lawyers you don't need. Start writing your 2019 story at LegalZoom.com right now. For special savings, be sure to enter promo code BEN in the referral box at checkout. LegalZoom is indeed where life meets legal. That is LegalZoom.com. And again, when you enter promo code BEN at checkout in the referral box, then you will get special savings. So go check them out right now, LegalZoom.com. Make sure that you are saving on your legal services the way that you should. Venezuela is indeed a terribly run country. And here's the reality. It's been a terribly run country for years. I know that the left wants to suggest that this is just since Chavez died or the late years of Hugo Chavez. It's been terribly run since the late 90s when Hugo Chavez's government decided to nationalize all of the oil industry, redistribute the wealth, put that company in the hands of his best friends in the government, centralize all power, move all the dissenters out of the military. If you take a look at Chavez's record, you see people on the left praising him for reducing poverty in Latin America. And that is really not the case. The fact is that poverty across Latin America reduced during the 1990s and 2000s because of economic growth. It kind of was equivalent in Venezuela, about the same. But Chavez destroyed the economy. I mean, just destroyed it because he made the entire economy dependent on oil. The entire economy dependent on the government's exports of oil. So when the oil prices dropped, the economy just fell apart. So here are a few ways that Chavez destroyed the economy and Maduro has followed suit. This is from Stephen Keppel over at ABC News. Number one, Venezuela went from being heavily dependent on oil in 1998. 77% of Venezuela's exports in 1998 were oil. By 2011, oil was 96% of all exports. That's because of the idiotic Marxist notion known as dependency theory. Dependency theory is this idea that if you are a state like Venezuela, you're a country like Venezuela, and you are importing goods, you are dependent on those goods. You have been made dependent. So you have to raise tariffs to extraordinary levels so that you can create homegrown industry. The only problem is your consumers can't afford any of that stuff, and so you end up impoverishing your country. The only thing Venezuela was exporting, the only thing, was oil. So when the oil prices dropped, catastrophe. The Chavez government crippled private businesses and national industry through expropriations and nationalizations. They expropriated or nationalized various sectors, including aluminum, cement, gold, iron, steel, farming, transportation, electricity, food production, banking, paper, and the media. The number of private companies in industry dropped from 14,000 in 1998 to 9,000 in 2011. No one in their right mind would build a factory in Venezuela because it was going to be nationalized, expropriated, and stolen by the government of Venezuela. No one was investing. In 2011, Latin America enjoyed a record of more than $150 billion in foreign investment, with Brazil receiving $67 billion. Venezuela's neighbor Colombia received $13 billion. Venezuela, a country rich in natural resources and human labor, received only $5 billion. The Venezuelan currency has been a mess because it turns out that when you borrow enormous quantities of money in order for you to pay off all of your friends and supporters, well, somebody is going to want that money back, and then you have to inflate your way out of it. The Bolivar Fuerte it had lost 2/3 of its value since it was launched in 2008. It was launched in 2008 because of a previous devaluation of the currency. Prices in Venezuela went up by 23% per year for more than 10 years as of 2011. Imagine, right now in the United States, we have an inflation rate in prices of maybe 2-3% per year on average. Imagine that everything you buy went up 20% every year. So within 5 years, the price of everything had doubled. Okay, that's what was going on in Venezuela. And of course, Venezuela became unbelievably violent because not only were there local police forces and extrajudicial gangs supported by the government killing people, but they weren't policing actual crime. The murder rate per 100,000 citizens went from 25 in 1999 to 45 in 2011. I mean, that's incredible. In the same period of time, violence has dropped pretty much everywhere else on the planet, but not in Venezuela. So when you hear the left was defending Venezuela for years on end, I mean, really defending them, and then now it's collapsing, I feel like we should go back and we should have to ask all these folks who defended Venezuela why we should let them run the American economy. We should have to ask folks like AOC what her perspective is on Venezuela. Why does she think Venezuela failed? And if she says, well, I'm not an expert on Venezuela, and say, well, read a book, lady. How about you actually, that's fine. You don't have to be an expert on Venezuela. How about you do some reading and come back to us and say a week? How about that? But the notion here is that if you are on the left and you support a radical regime that is socialistic in nature, and then it fails, you have nothing to apologize for. And this has been the most crucial aspect of the left's continuing momentum for the last 100 years, is that they never have to apologize for supporting regimes that end in failure, tragedy, and human destruction. The left was heavily supportive of the USSR in the 1920s and 1930s, even as millions of people were being slaughtered. The left in America was heavily supportive of Cuba when Castro took power. He was lauded by the media. He did an American tour. Che Guevara was featured on a bunch of top-line news networks as a revolutionary leader. There's still college students wearing around Che Guevara t-shirts today. Okay, he was an evil mass murderer. Cuba is a human gulag. It's only after a little while this stuff becomes uncomfortable for the left, and then they move on to the next country. They'll have their country of the future. Venezuela during the 90s and the early 2000s was the country of the future. Well, now it's the country of the past. And it's interesting to see how folks on the left are reacting to all of this. Again, if you are satisfied, if you are satisfied with AOC's answer on all of this, let me suggest that you in the media, you firefighters, are not doing your jobs, which is just a massive shock. I know I'm shocked that you're not doing your jobs. I'm shocked that you're not going and asking Bernie Sanders about Venezuela and his perspective on Maduro. Now, a lot of these folks on the hard left are going to hide behind non-interventionism. And we can't get involved, guys. We really can't get involved. Same people will argue, by the way, that the state of Israel should be boycotted because the state of Israel is mean, even though the state of Israel is more liberal than any of the countries that they have supported in terms of human rights, in terms of accepting other people, in terms of economic freedom. But we can't interfere. Venezuela's business is Venezuela's business. Well, it was that same perspective that has led to the continuation of the Iranian regime. Again, no one is suggesting. So I'll tell you where the next move is going to be. Now the left is going to say, are you suggesting war in Venezuela? The answer is no. We're suggesting a continuation of exactly the same policies that have brought hundreds of thousands of people into the street with massive public support to depose one of the worst regimes on the planet. And if you don't support that, if you think the solution to this is to leave Maduro in power and to undercut those protesters, I don't know what to tell you, because let me tell you what the next step is. If there is a negotiated settlement and Maduro is left in power, and the military, which is run by Maduro, is left in power, the next thing that will happen is the world will turn its eyes away, and then a bunch of people will get slaughtered. Because that is exactly the same thing that has happened in Turkey. In Turkey, there was an attempt, a failed coup attempt against Erdogan, who's an Islamist dictator. It happened, a year ago now? There are those of us who were rooting hard for Erdogan to go. He did not go. The West turned a blind eye. He proceeded to jail or murder tens to hundreds of thousands of people. No one cares. Now he's part of the community of nations again. The only way to fight dictatorship is to keep your eye on it all the time and to condemn it and to call for its ousting. There cannot be deals made with evil dictators who are running roughshod over their own people to keep those dictators in power. Especially when those dictators are not allies of the United States. I mean, when it comes down to American interests, there's no question America's interests lie in Maduro going. All right, in just a second, I want to talk about the State of the Union address and President Trump caving on that. We'll get to that in just 1 second. First, let's talk about your online security and privacy. So, as a public figure, I am constantly worried about being hacked or spied on. I don't want my emails compromised or my credit card number or online banking password stolen, but that does happen to hundreds of millions of people every single year. So how can you protect yourself? Well, the company I trust to defend my online security and privacy is ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN secures and anonymizes my connection by encrypting 100% of my network data and hiding my IP address. That means nobody can record or access my online activity. Download the ExpressVPN app on your computer or smartphone, and then just use the internet the way you normally would. You click one button in the ExpressVPN app, and voila, you are now protected. ExpressVPN is great for accessing content from anywhere, with VPN locations in 94 countries and blazing fast speeds. ExpressVPN is consistently rated the world's #1 VPN service for internet users. So, if you want to protect yourself online, which you should, I mean, there's nothing worse than having your identity hacked, your credit card stolen. The nice folks at ExpressVPN have extended special pricing of less than $7 per month to all my fans. So go visit expressvpn.com/Ben and go claim that discount. Again, that is expressvpn.com/Ben to learn more. expressvpn.com/Ben. Go check it out right now. Okay. Meanwhile, President Trump, unfortunately, just caved when it came to the State of the Union address. So as you recall, there was a showdown between the president and Nancy Pelosi. So Nancy Pelosi issued an invitation for the president to deliver the State of the Union address. And then she revoked that invitation, saying that there were no security resources available, which of course was a lie. And then President Trump said, well, maybe I'll just do something else for the State of the Union address. Maybe I'll go over to the Senate chamber and give the State of the Union address from there. Or maybe I'll go down to the border. Maybe I'll counter-program the State of the Union address. Well, now President Trump has basically caved. He says, as the shutdown was going on, he just tweeted this out, as the shutdown was going on, Nancy Pelosi asked me to give the State of the Union address. I agreed. She then changed her mind because of the shutdown, suggesting a later date. This is her prerogative. I will do the address when the shutdown is over. I am not looking for an alternative venue for the State of the Union address because there is no venue that can compete with the history, tradition, and importance of the House chamber. I look forward to giving a great State of the Union address in the near future. Okay, so what that means is that if he caves and then has to give a State of the Union address after caving to Democrats, it's going to be humiliating for him. So either it means he's doubling down on his position with regard to the government shutdown, or it means that the government shutdown ends ignominiously with him taking some sort of executive action to redirect funds from one area to another area. Whatever it is, not a great look for the president. As I suggested, he should have counter-programmed this thing. He should have simply said, okay, well, you don't want to have me to the Congress because you don't want me pointing directly at you and saying that this is your fault, Nancy Pelosi. Well, instead, I'm just going to go down to the border and I'm going to say that this is your fault. Because, in fact, it is your fault. The President of the United States has come out with several proposals for changing the math here, but those proposals have been met with complete apathy and indifference by the Democratic Party. Now, as the shutdown continues, things are, in fact, getting worse and worse. In the early days of a shutdown, the good lesson to be learned is that a lot of the essential services that the non-essential services that we think we can't live without, we can actually live without. But as the shutdown continues, and essential personnel, folks in the TSA, folks in the Department of Defense, as those folks, Department of Homeland Security, don't get their checks, then things get ugly very quickly. Air traffic controllers, they're saying, listen, we got a lot of folks retiring, and those folks have no interest in staying employed if they're not going to get paid. So we may be, in fact, understaffed, and the president can't simply order new hires when there's no money coming into the federal government and no spending taking place on the federal government level. So things are going to get worse and worse. Folks are, in fact, showing up, at food lines because they don't actually have money because they're not getting their checks. So let's not pretend that the government shutdown isn't a bad thing. It is a bad thing. This is not how the government is supposed to operate. But the answer to that is Nancy Pelosi signing a minute check for some border fencing. That's all. which again necessitates the president getting on his horse and going around the country telling Americans why exactly the government is currently shut down. Right now, Democrats have come up with a counter. So according to the Associated Press, House Democrats, feeling pressure to display their vision for border security, are preparing a package that would ignore President Trump's demand for $5.7 billion for a wall with Mexico and would instead pay for other areas aimed at protecting the border. Again, this shows how petty they are, because they're willing to spend a bunch of money on border security, but not on the fencing. As I said before, I think the solution to the government shutdown is pretty easy. That is, President Trump should say, listen, I know you guys hate me. I know that you guys don't want to give me a victory. And I know that you're pretending that we don't need a border fence because you think that I'm doing something deeply wrong because I am Trump. But here's an idea. I won't even intervene. I want you to delegate $5 billion to border security to be allotted as the people in border control see fit. We will let an impartial panel of border control specialists who work for border control, who work for ICE, and who work for immigration naturalization. We will let all the Border Patrol agents decide where the money goes. So it's not up to me. It's not me saying I need the wall. It's Border Patrol deciding where the money goes. And then Democrats can say, okay, we didn't give him his wall. We gave the money to Border Patrol for them to use it where they best see fit. And then if it turns out it's a wall, Trump gets his win. And Democrats can say, we didn't give him the win. Border Patrol gave him the win. Right? In essence, kick all the responsibility over to Border Patrol. That seems like not a terrible idea to me. Democrats are instead saying, sure, we'll do border security, but we won't give Trump anything that he wants. As the government slogged through a record 33rd day of its partial shutdown on Wednesday, details of Democrats' border security plan and its costs remained a work in progress, according to the AP, though some said it might match Trump's $5.7 billion figure. Party leaders said it would include money for scanning devices and other technological tools for improving security at ports of entry and along the boundary, plus funds for more border agents and immigration judges. If his $5.7 billion is about border security, then we see ourselves fulfilling that request, only doing it with what I like to call using a smart wall, said number 3 House Democratic leader Jim Clyburn, Democrat of South Carolina. Again, listen, I don't know that Trump is a border expert. I certainly know that House Democrats are not border experts because they haven't really cared very deeply about border security for quite a while. So again, the solution, kick it over to the regulators. I mean, it's hilarious. We have now found the one area of American government where legislators don't want to kick the responsibility over to the regulators. So the legislature will constantly pass bills saying, you know what, EPA, you write all the regulations. We'll send you some funding and you fill in all the blanks. We'll send you legislation that looks like Mad Libs. It says, here's $1 billion for blank, and you just fill in what you think you need. We'll do that with the Department of Education. We'll do that with the Department of Health and Human Services. We'll do it with every executive department. But when it comes to Border Patrol, then the Democrats are like, you know what, we know this stuff. We know this down to the marrow. So we're going to specifically determine where that money goes. Or is it just a cynical ploy? The answer, of course, is that it is, in fact, a very cynical ploy. Well, the shutdown, according to polling data, again, is hurting President Trump with the general public. Just 34% of Americans like his performance as president, according to this latest Associated Press poll. 6 in 10 assign a great deal of responsibility to him for the shutdown, around double the share currently blaming Democrats. There's a Senate GOP bill that would temporarily shield from deportation 700,000 Dreamers, and in return, Trump would get his border security wall. Democrats have objected to other provisions in that same bill because they're saying there are poison pills in there. Okay, again, this is where the negotiations should start, but there is no negotiation that is currently taking place. There are a couple proposals that have been floated out there. I'll get to those in just 1 second. But first, let's talk about your mobile bill. So the big wireless provider stands for a lot of things. Big contracts, big bills, big fees. Like AT&T has a new $800 million administrative fee increase. But what Big Wireless doesn't want you to know is there is a way to cut your wireless bill down to just $15 a month. This is why you need Mint Mobile, the game-changing company that's taken everything wrong with Big Wireless and made it right. You could save like $1,000 a year with Mint Mobile without sacrificing quality service. How? Well, Mint Mobile makes it really easy. You use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan. You can keep your old number along with all your existing contacts. Choose between 2, 5, or 10 gigabyte 4G LTE plans. So the way a lot of these phone companies get you is they say you need unlimited data. And then you don't use anything like unlimited data. And then they charge you for the unlimited data. Well, you don't need to do that. Every plan comes with unlimited talk and text. If you are not 100% satisfied, Mint Mobile has you covered with their 7-day money-back guarantee. So you can try it for a week, and if you don't like it, we'll give you your money back. Ditch that old wireless bill. Start saving right now with Mint Mobile. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month, plus free shipping on your new Mint Mobile SIM card, go to mintmobile.com/Ben. That is mintmobile.com/Ben. mint.mobile.com/Ben. Cut that wireless bill to $15 a month and get free shipping on the Mint Mobile SIM card, mintmobile.com/Ben. Okay, I want to talk about some of the other proposals for the border shutdown. I also want to talk about the latest with regard to Covington Catholic, because it turns out that the real issue here is MAGA hats. MAGA hats are inherently terrible and racist, really. We'll get to all that in just 1 second. First, you're going to have to go subscribe. $9.99 a month gets you a subscription to this show. It gets you a subscription to Andrew Klavan's show, Matt Walsh's show, Michael Knowles' show. All sorts of great shows, and Michael Knowles' show. Like all sorts of great stuff. And when you subscribe, you also get 2 additional hours of me in the afternoon. You know how stressful and painful it is to do those 2 hours? Just ask my producers. They have to sit here with me. But we're doing it all for you. So that's why you need to subscribe. $99 a year. You get all of that plus this. The Leftist Tears, hot or cold tumbler. Go check it out right now. And you can enjoy those tears, which are flowing freely each and every day here at The Ben Shapiro Show. Go check that out right now. Also, when you subscribe over at YouTube, iTunes, you get access to our Sunday specials. You can ask me questions, all sorts of great stuff. You can, like during the radio show, actually, during the breaks in the radio show, if you're live watching, then you can ask me questions during the breaks, and I'll answer them for you. So all sorts of awesome stuff happening behind the paywall. Go check it out right now. We are the largest, fastest growing conservative podcast and radio show in the nation.